therapist Kristen Jacobson.
Hey everyone, I'm Kristen, the anxiety therapist, and today I want to talk about why forgiveness is the self-care practice you need for 2025. So the start of a new year typically brings this opportunity for reflection and renewal, and a lot of us think of the typical resolutions, right? Eating better, exercising more, reading that stack of books that's gathering dust on your bookshelf. But one resolution that's often overlooked is practicing forgiveness. And I get it. Forgiveness is not the most obvious choice. When somebody wrongs us, the idea of forgiving them can really feel like we're giving up power or letting them off the hook. You know, this is something that I've really been grappling with for a long time now. But the truth is, forgiveness isn't about them at all. It's really about you, your health, your peace of mind, and your freedom from carrying all of that emotional baggage into the new year. So I want to talk a little bit about why forgiveness can be such a game changer and what it is and what it isn't. So first, I want to clear up a common myth that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened or excusing bad behavior. It's not about saying what the other person did was okay, but rather it's about releasing yourself from the grip of that anger and resentment and accepting, not liking. There's a big difference. Accepting means accepting reality. Doesn't mean we have to like reality, right? But we're accepting that what happened, and we can think of forgiveness as a decision to really stop letting someone else's actions control our own emotional state. We can't go back and change what happened, right? But you can control how much you continue to allow it to affect you. And psychologists define forgiveness as the conscious choice to let go of negative feelings towards someone who wronged you. And so this doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation, right? Forgiveness is more of an internal thing. It's about your peace, not necessarily repairing the relationship, unless that's something that you truly want. So let's talk a little bit about how forgiveness is actually good for your health. If you've ever held a grudge or, have that anger and resentment sort of festering inside of you, you know how much emotional energy it consumes. Resentment can really feel like carrying this heavy backpack full of rocks everywhere you go. But what's worse is holding on to anger doesn't just weigh on your mind, it actually can harm your body too. And research shows that anger and resentment can be associated with chronic stress, and this can really wreak havoc on your health. We know that stress leads to elevated levels of cortisol, that stress hormone, and over time, this can contribute to things like high blood pressure, a weak immune system, insomnia, and anxiety and depression. But forgiveness, on the other hand, does the opposite. So studies have shown that people who forgive tend to have lower levels of stress and overall better well-being. Because when you forgive, you allow your body to relax and heal, and this sort of breaks that cycle of fight or flight responses that tend to be triggered by that lingering anger. One of the most liberating aspects of forgiveness is realizing that it's primarily for your benefit. Let's be honest, the person who hurt you might not even be thinking about the incident, thinking about your feelings, but meanwhile, you're here replaying the situation on loop or, a certain conversation or the relationship in general, and those feelings of anger and frustration come up all over again. So you can really think of forgiveness as a gift that you give to yourself, because by forgiving, you're choosing to take back your emotional energy, and you're essentially saying, I won't let this situation control me or my happiness anymore. So I want to give you a little case study to sort of exemplify what I'm talking about. So let's take Mark. This is obviously a pseudonym because I keep all client information confidential. But a few years ago, Mark's business partner embezzled money from their company, and this really left him financially and emotionally devastated. So Mark spent years ruminating over this betrayal, replaying every conversation, wondering how he could have missed the signs, and imagining scenarios where he confronted his former partner. So after years of this, Mark finally decided to seek out therapy. And we explored the benefits of forgiveness, not for the sake of his ex-partner, but for himself. And at first, Mark had a really hard time. He had these thoughts of, why should I let him off the hook? And was really resistant to the idea of forgiveness. But then, as I explained earlier, forgiveness wasn't about erasing what happened. It was about accepting what happened and freeing himself from the emotional prison he'd built around the situation and relationship. And he also had to work on forgiving himself for not being aware of what was going on. A lot of times we sort of question ourselves. We have a hard time trusting ourselves, or we talk down to ourselves, like, how could I have missed this? And we have to remember that everything makes sense in hindsight, but people can be very sneaky and manipulative. And so even if you are very intuitive and self-aware and are very cognizant of what's going on, there are still things that you can miss. So Mark began journaling his feelings and practicing some mindfulness exercises to help process his anger. And then over time, he was able to realize that holding on to resentment was really just hurting him. And letting go of this grudge didn't mean forgetting the betrayal, but it meant reclaiming his peace of mind. And so today, Mark describes forgiveness as really one of the best decisions he's ever made. Again, not for his ex-partner, that relationship is over, but for his own mental health. So I want to share some techniques for how you can start forgiving in 2025. I fully recognize that forgiveness is easier said than done. And it's not like we're going to flip a switch and things are going to be better. But it is possible, and you don't have to do it all at once. So I want to share some steps just to get started. The first is to acknowledge your feelings. It's completely okay to feel angry, hurt, betrayed, whatever. And suppressing these emotions won't make them go away. Instead, just take time to sit with your feelings and name them. Sometimes that can be really helpful, just putting a name to the emotion. And this is where journaling can be a really helpful tool, because as you write, it actually causes you to think about things and process things in a different way. Number 2 is to consider the cost of holding on. So what is holding on to this resentment costing you? Is it draining your energy? Is it affecting your other relationships? Is it blocking your ability to enjoy life? What are the costs of holding on to this resentment? Number 3 is to shift your perspective. So this one's tricky, but it's important. You want to try to see the situation from a wider lens. So was the person who hurt you acting out of their own pain or ignorance? Understanding their motives doesn't excuse the behavior, but it can help you let go of that personal sting. And oftentimes we come to find out that the other person has experienced their own trauma. Number 4 is to practice self-compassion. So forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to dismiss your own pain. I want you to be kind to yourself as you work through these emotions and remind yourself that forgiveness is a process. It's not a one-time event. And then finally, you can seek out support. A lot of people really struggle to forgive, and talking to a therapist or even a trusted friend can really help. And sometimes having that outside perspective can make it easier to untangle the complex feelings that we have internally. So why not make 2025 the year that you prioritize forgiveness? Like I said, it's really an act of self-care. It's not at all for the other person. And you can think of it as sort of this emotional decluttering, right? Clearing out the grudges and the resentments that no longer serve you. And whether that's forgiving a difficult family member, a toxic ex, or even yourself, this process can really create space for more joy, connection, and mental clarity in your life. So forgiveness isn't easy, but it is worth it. And like any resolution, it starts with baby steps. So as you sort of map out your goals for 2025, consider adding forgiveness and let go of what's weighing you down. And you really deserve the freedom that comes with putting down that heavy backpack full of rocks. So here's to a year of healing and growth. I hope you all have a wonderful new year.